So I'm going to change it up a little bit. The title of my presentation in your app says The Enabling Force of Technology at Liberty Mutual. And I'm going to talk about 3 ways to win with people. And I thought, well, I never could think of a more appropriate title than The Enabling Force of Technology in terms of our people. Right? So I thought the keynotes this morning did a really good job of talking about some of the technology, but really what we focused more on was actually the culture change that's required to enable the cycle that we're talking about. So I'm going to talk more about people and culture than I actually am going to talk about the technology. So we're going to start with just talking about 3 ways to win with people. And I'm going to open just talking a little bit about who I am. I started with Liberty in 2005, and I started in the technical development program. Right? This was an alternative for me as compared to continuing my education within graduate school. So this was an opportunity to just really gain some additional insight and knowledge throughout my career early on. And this was an opportunity that provided some rotational assignments. And since then, I've held various leadership positions, and right now, within the commercial insurance business unit, my team runs primarily platform engineering, cloud, DevOps, security, and document solutions. That's my lovely wife, Denise. We just got married in June, so it's been a busy summer for me. And this is actually my first business trip since getting married, and it just happened to be Vegas. So that could be a good or a bad thing. We're very active in our church. I play a lot of golf, and I actually became a runner about 2 years ago. And I'm going to use that as a little bit of an analogy throughout my talk on how to win with people as to how I became a runner just over 2 years ago. But first, let's talk a little bit about some of the disruption we're experiencing in the insurance industry. Autonomous vehicles. Does this concept scare anybody else, right? Of getting into a car, thank you. Getting into a car and just telling it where to go and just sitting there, right? The concept, I'm sure I'll come around to it as the technology continues to mature and prove itself. But the technology is really changing everything about our personal auto line. And we have to change ourselves. We have to think about what that's going to mean to our products and services as we move forward. How do we go about ensuring the manufacturer versus ensuring the actual driver? So this is just one example of many changes going on in the insurance industry. Another is blockchain technology. Right? This very cool and very sophisticated technology is one that we're actually partnering with some other financial services companies and evaluating some of the near-term use cases and potential long-term use cases for how we can deploy products and services using this blockchain technology. And it's an exciting opportunity just to kind of think about what could we use this technology for to really differentiate ourselves in the industry. And finally, something less technical, but what about just the generational differences and experiences that we're having with the technology-savvy generation that's growing up, right? Whether they started with using iPhones when they were 4 and 5, whether or not they were their own iPhones, they were using their parents' iPhones. All right, my 7-year-old stepdaughter is already using an iPad, and she does so just seamlessly. And so what do we need to do in terms of changing the expectations of what our products and services provide for our end users? Or other trends, simply like urbanization. People living in cities versus living in the suburbs and not even driving cars. What does that mean to us as an organization? So just kind of wrapping that into a quote that I really like, and that's, we're in this era where we're reimagining nearly everything, right? Powered by new devices, connectivity, new user interfaces, and beauty. Right? There's a lot of technology terms in there, right? Devices and connectivity and user interfaces. But what about beauty? Well, I think there's an example in the tech industry, Apple, where they really have grasped onto this concept of beauty. Right? The iPhone, iPad, right? And they've really differentiated themselves as to what is it that their services provide that is attractive to their customer. Right? And in your industry, what is it that is attractive to your consumers or your customers that's really going to differentiate you? Right? So I love this. We are really reimagining everything, no matter what industry you're in. And the pace of change, we saw it in the keynote presentations this morning, and the pace of change in technology, as well as any one of our industries, is just going to continue to accelerate even more. So what we're doing at Liberty Mutual is we're really changing the culture. Right? And it's really our company's not so secret weapon anymore. Everything we do, technology is in the forefront of how we think. We do many more innovation types of challenges. We're collaborating much more, challenging ourselves just to continuously improve. And it's one of our core principles as a company, just to continuously improve and innovate as an organization. And we're really changing everything that we do within our IT organization. And just a little bit more about the company before I dive in. We're 73rd on the Fortune 100 list and continuing to move up that list. We have over 5,000 technology professionals worldwide in 5 continents. Right? And that's the scale there is massive. And we are doing so much with technology nowadays. And we have actually been recognized as an employer of choice for our internship program and some of our diversity and inclusion initiatives. So we're really making some headway there. So now I'm going to get into the core of my presentation and talk about 3 ways to win with your people. And first is simply risk-taking and experimentation. Right? And at a high level, it seems so basic. Right? We have to take risks in order to succeed, in order to challenge ourselves, and in order to improve. Right? But you have to apply a discipline to it. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about. So I don't have to tell a group of technologists that everything we do in technology is changing. Right? From the way we gather requirements or user stories from our business to the way we deploy and write our applications, everything is changing. And that's making a lot of folks uncomfortable, right? And that's okay, it's expected. We have to embrace that uncomfortable time and really look to where we can make some magic happen and really differentiate your business, differentiate your teams to be successful. So one of the things that we're doing is we're approaching problems differently, right? And that's through experimentation. I love this visual from the Lean Enterprise book, where you talk about getting a cross-functional team together, right, and applying an experiment. And I would add one more step in there, and I think it's part of where we've learned a little bit from our engagement with Pivotal, and that is form a hypothesis, right? Document this hypothesis, right? Because if you're disciplined in doing that, you actually can have a more measurable outcome at the end where you can determine, was my experiment successful or not? And what did I learn from it? And how am I then going to pivot going forward? Right? So this disciplined process, I think this is a great analogy, I think, to the circle of code we talked about this morning. Right? And the technology that underlies a lot of the Pivotal offerings really helps us do this rapidly, do this continuously. And that's something that we're continuing to challenge ourselves to get better at. So I mentioned I was going to talk a little bit about my running experience. So just over 2 years ago, I was challenged to run a half marathon in support of charity. And I was like, there's no way. I've never run more than 2 or 3 miles at a time in my life. Right? So I didn't sign up, right? I didn't do it. But they kept at me and really kept asking me. And so I was like, all right, I'll do it. And I really changed my entire approach. I took a lot of risk, you could say, and applied a lot of experiments. Experiments being, what was my training regimen going to look like? Was it a mile run and then a walk and then a mile run and then a walk? And what's a 5K test going to look like? Right? And so now running is a part of who I am. Right? In 2014, I actually completed my first half marathon in under 2 hours. Right? And since then, I've continued to run, and now it's a part of who I am. So just because of that initial challenge and risk that I took, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot more about my capabilities that I never thought was really possible. One of my favorite quotes goes back a ways, but it's do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Right? And this is something I actually printed it on my college graduation invitation. And it was something that, for me, I lived in Indiana and graduated from college in Indiana, and I moved to New Hampshire to join Liberty Mutual, where I didn't know anybody. I had no idea really what I was getting into, but it was a challenge for me and something that I wanted to take on and try and really, form my own path. So these are just some examples, like in my personal life, that we can really apply back to our companies as well. And one specific example that we've done here in the last couple of months even, we did what we called a cloud readiness hackathon, where one of my team members approached me and said, hey, we can really make a lot of progress in preparing our applications for migration to the public cloud if we just got some folks together and really dove in on a particular challenge. And that is just getting more of our applications onto our continuous integration pipeline. And so we did enough planning just to get started. Right? We picked the candidate applications and got the right team members together. And we actually got together just about a month ago for 4 days. This is an actual picture in the background of a tornado warning that was going on that week. But 4 days in one room, and the hypothesis was that we can migrate 15 applications to our continuous integration pipeline in 4 days. And we actually exceeded that with about 23, right? And we're continuing to then learn from that and understand, okay, why were we so successful in doing this? And what can we then translate and take back out to the rest of our team to apply that to other applications and continue to mature each of our applications and the methodologies that we apply. And just real quick, I want to talk a little bit about tomorrow. My colleague Dave Arringer is going to present on from commit to production in 10 minutes at a century-old insurance company. Right? And I think he's going to tie a little bit more of the technology into this culture shift that we're talking about. So I think it's something that's really, it's going to be a good example of how it is that we're changing ourselves every step of the way. So first was risk-taking and experimentation. Second is teaming. Right? The second key to winning with your people is teaming. And it seems so simple, but yet when we look around many of our companies, how often are we really working together at the same computer, right? Or really working together at the same whiteboard? We need to apply more of those types of techniques, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the few of the ones that we're doing. Kick it off with just a quick quote from Rod Collins, and that is, the wonderful thing about effective organizations is that we do not have to be individually perfect to succeed. We just have to be perfect together. Right? And another way to think about that is the smartest person in this room is not as smart as everybody put together. Right? And so it's a simple concept to think about, but do we really apply it in how we operate as teams? Right? So I think we just need to be more intentional about how we deploy certain types of techniques to really win with our teams. So I'm going to quickly go back to my running analogy. And that is, with the charity I run for, we have this concept called Go Farther Together. And I know I couldn't have gone as far if I didn't have teammates that were motivating me, inspiring me, and teaching me what it means to be a runner in terms of my training regimen, my diet, right? What types of stretching I should be doing for particular pains, right? Those types of things were really helpful along the way. And with their support, I was able to go farther. And then last year, I actually ran the full marathon in Chicago. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done. Very painful at about mile 22. For those of you that have run a marathon, you know what I'm talking about. But one of the most rewarding experiences of my life as well. And I wasn't going to be able to do that without the group runs and the motivation through social media that we really took on. So back to, again, what we're doing at Liberty Mutual. We've used hackathons as a way of promoting teamwork and innovation. Right? We've had formal hackathons annually for the last 3 years where we bring a big group of team members together. Last year we had over 300 team members in our Boston headquarters. They took ideas from our business partners. They brought some of their own ideas. They coded for 24 hours straight, and then they presented to senior leadership and executive leadership on for 3 minutes on a pitch of what they did and how they did it. And then they were rewarded on the idea itself and the technologies that they used to deploy it. It's been really successful in terms of employee engagement, as well as just bringing some of those ideas to value. But we actually had more ideas that didn't work out than did work out. And that's okay, right? Because we were able to learn from that and then pivot and understand, okay, this business idea or concept didn't work out the way we expected, but here's what we did learn, and here's what may potentially work the next time we do something like this. A couple other techniques, one being agile hothouses, right? Bringing more of the business to the table and getting everybody together to innovate on ideas. And another one is data jams. We actually partnered with a local university to do this data jam where we took actual data and deployed new ways of just looking at models and thinking about how we can use our data that we already have to drive more business value. So another example of just bringing folks together and teaming up with folks that aren't even in our company to continue to learn and really engage and improve ourselves. So specifically, one of the things we're engaged with Pivotal Labs on right now is an engagement we kicked off 2 weeks ago on application modernization. We have selected 14 of our more legacy Java-based applications, and we're looking to migrate them to PCF. in 10 weeks, right? But the thing I'm most excited about here is what we can learn from this engagement, right? Not just the fact that we're moving 14 applications to Cloud Foundry and we're going to get the benefits out of that, but the fact that we're going to learn common frameworks and patterns for what it's going to take to move more of our applications to modern infrastructures like Cloud Foundry. When we sat on day one of inception and I talked about what my goals were, my goal was primarily learning, right? And we are deploying the paired programming techniques that Pivotal Labs has brought to us. And I think in just 2 weeks, we've already moved 3 applications from our Java-based technologies to Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So already a success and looking forward to the next 8 weeks. And then really working with Pivotal as well to figure out how we're going to scale this broader, right, and internally, and what can we stick and what can stick in terms of our culture change as it relates to things like paired programming and teamwork. So the third thing in winning with your people is continuous learning. And this is something that I think has been important to me in my own career, right? And I'll give a recent example of the security team within our business unit has only been a part of my team for about a year. And often people will ask me, it's like, what do you think about having security as part of your team? And my answer is quick. It's without hesitation, I say I love it, right? And people look at me kind of funny and say, why do you love security? Well, it's because I'm continuously learning new things. I'm learning things that are scary in the threat landscape of the industry, but I'm also learning things like how we can mitigate all those risks and protect the most valuable assets that we have as a company. So how do you achieve continuous learning? I would say it starts with the 2 prerequisites we've already talked about, and that is the risk-taking and experimentation, as well as the teaming techniques that we talked about. That will obtain continuous learning. We can attend conferences, and I'm not saying conferences are a bad thing, right? We can attend training, we can read books, we can individually improve ourselves, but this continuous learning is going to be more of an environment that you intentionally deploy at your companies to really continue to improve yourselves. Because as you saw earlier, the pace of change, and as you've heard already throughout this conference, the pace of change is not going to slow down, it's only going to speed up. And we as individuals cannot keep up with that. We have to keep up as a team and as a unit. So for the leaders in this room, right, or specifically managers in leadership roles, we have to think about the environments we create. I love this quote from Albert Einstein. It says, "I never teach my pupils, I only provide the conditions in which they can learn." I think this is now the most important thing for any leader in their role is to put their teams in a position to continuously learn, right? We often talk about putting our teams in a position to succeed, and I would say a prerequisite is putting them in a position to learn. And so if you're not in an environment that allows you to continuously improve your own capabilities and your own leadership styles, then maybe you should create one or find one. And that's really a challenge that I have for all of you. So at Liberty Mutual, this is one of our core principles as a company. We continuously improve and innovate, right? And when I joined Liberty Mutual in 2005, I told you why I joined. It was because of the rotational opportunities and continue my learning. But I've stuck at Liberty Mutual and I've stayed here primarily because of this principle. We're definitely not standing still. We're continuously reinventing ourselves and applying new approaches to continuously improve what it is that we provide to our customers, as well as how it is we provide it. So my challenge to you is to just try something new. This is how you can get started this week. And maybe it's something as simple as going up to your favorite presenter. It doesn't have to be me. But going up to your favorite presenter who you really thought was engaging on a particular topic and saying, this is what's going on at my company, and I really thought that your point, resonated with me. How can I make it real at my company? And you can continuously learn that way. Or maybe it's going to a talk this week on something that you know nothing about, right? And then you can reapply that and share it with your teammates and really try something new. In closing, I talk about the finish line here, and my next thing for running is I'm back to the half marathon, and I'm really now trying to beat my personal record. So I'm going for like under an hour and 50 minutes. And I'm applying new experiments to try that. to change the way that I think about my training. And I've got about 13 weeks to go, so I can try some new things and see what works. Right? But I would challenge you to think about, within your company, right, what risks can you take? What experiments can you do? What hypotheses do you have? Right? And how can you deploy some of these teaming techniques and invest in relationships that are going to enable continuous learning? I'll close with this, and that is, we talked about the pace of change earlier, whether it be in the insurance industry or your industry, right? And the pace of change in technology, you're hearing all about that this week. So what do you have to lose? We can't afford not to do these things and to win with our people and not just technology. With that, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions, or I'll be up here afterwards. I'm also on Twitter, but thank you for your time. Any questions? Yeah. So the question is, you said we already deployed a couple of applications to Cloud Foundry in 2 weeks. What types of applications were they? Is that your question? Yeah, good question. I mean, we selected 14 candidate applications to get started. And actually, we started narrowing it down from a list of about 40. So Inception Day, we really did a lot of basic planning and snap analysis is what we called it, to take a snapshot of our applications and understand, okay, where do we want to start? And how do we want to sequence the applications? So we took 2 applications in particular, and one was very simple. Right? Well, we wanted to start small, capture some learnings, and move from there. But the other one was a monolith in some ways, right? And we were intentionally choosing one of those, more of a medium complexity type app, to learn more about what it was going to take to modernize that application and break it into services going forward. So we actually took an application that existed as a monolith, and we broke it into 2 services to get started, the UI and a services layer. And so that's what we've already done and already been able to achieve as a team. And the next evolution of that modernization is to take those services even further and modernize them into a few more microservices as we move forward. The approach we're taking going forward is the higher complexity apps. We did leave for about week 4 or week 5. Obviously, we're going to see how the next couple weeks go. But we're going to take those on a little bit later and apply the learnings that we've had thus far already. It's a good question. Yeah.
So the industry you are in is a pretty regulated industry. So there is a boundary to the amount of risk you can take. Now, I understand innovation, comes with an amount of risk. So what are the learnings of taking a risk of, say, completing a project in a very short interval, say, putting it in production, because things cannot go wrong.
Yeah.
So were there any lessons learned?
Yeah. So the question is, insurance is a very highly regulated industry, and so innovation being as important as it is to our business, what lessons learned have we kind of taken away from deploying these rapid iterations and continuing to build off of them? I would say there's a ton of lessons learned, right? And one is you have to start small with your experiment, right? So innovation in a non-production environment, have at it, right? Or a sandbox type of environment. So you can prove the value to a business stakeholder or a business partner through that type of approach, and really then determine, okay, what are going to be our next steps? And if it does lead to something that requires us to file a particular amendment to a particular product or service, it will take time, right? That part of it will take time and working with our business and working with the regulators. But we can prove incremental value, and I think that's the rapid iteration and the circle of code that was talked about this morning that I think we've really got some good wins out of so far.
One more question I have, maybe chance to others, but you did emphasize and you added hypothesis.
Yeah.
Can you a little bit elaborate on hypothesis, why you feel it's important?
Yeah.
Very interesting how it applies to your business.
Okay, so the question was, I emphasized in the risk-taking and experimentation being disciplined about writing down a hypothesis. And so just elaborate a little bit more on that. Yeah, and I would say that the most important reason I believe that the hypothesis is really important is when you get to the stoplight on the circle and you're ready to make a decision on whether or not you want to continue or whether or not you want to abandon the project or experiment or whether you want to pivot. I think it gives you something to look back on and say, okay, did my hypothesis come true at all? Is it right on, or is it just not true at all? So I think that discipline is important because without it, you get to that stoplight and you're like, well, what was I originally setting out to experiment and validate, right? And then you're left with maybe you continue in this cycle and you should have abandoned it to begin with. So I think you can really be more disciplined and learn from that hypothesis approach.
Hey, it's Eugene at Galvanize. Really appreciate the talk, Chris. So we're big fans of continuous learning as well, but we find it really difficult to push my team and our employees to actually do the continuous learning.
Yeah.
We tell them that, we preach it, and then they just actually do the day jobs and focus on that.
Right.
So I'd love to hear some specific examples of how you still do that.
Yeah. So question is, big fans of continuous learning and wanting to just talk about a little bit more of the tangible examples we have applied to be successful with continuous learning. And I would say we're still in the midst of this journey, so we haven't figured it all out, right? We're a technology organization of over 5,000 people, but using approaches like what we talked about with hackathons and agile hothouses and data jams got us started. People get energized in doing that, right? And we do have a lot of people who still are doing their day job, right, and doing it very effectively, and we need some of those people as we make this transition with our technology as well. But I would say some of those things got us started. And then this engagement with Pivotal is another way to continue to learn, right? And we're looking at more of like a transformation type approach, right, to scale all of these various things. Because many of our team members always kind of want to do these types of things, and it's hard to keep them connected sometimes in just some of the new ways of deploying Agile and those types of techniques. So we're still learning and we're still iterating, but I think the thing that's been successful is just to see the level of engagement continue to increase. Yeah.
What do you take as your insurance agency to get into the open innovation mindset? Because insurance companies typically are,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, so what does it take as an insurance company to get into the open innovation mindset? I would say it takes strong executive leadership to be able to do that because we by nature are risk adverse. That's what we do for a living, right? So I think we have strong executive buy-in. We have to kind of continuously disrupt ourselves because the way we've always done things is not going to continue to work in the insurance industry over time. So I think we've got that, and we've also got just some different approaches we've deployed, like I talked about, that are enabling our team members to be a little bit more free in terms of their thinking and their innovative mindset. Right? So we haven't figured it all out, but we're continuing to improve and open up that type of concept. And one of the things we're still figuring out a little bit more just how to bring the business more into the day-to-day innovation. Right? And we figured that out a little bit with our hackathons, right? But we want to continue to improve on that as well because they're at the forefront of everything that we do. Time for maybe one more? Yeah. What platform are we moving off of? Your traditional Java stacks, whether it be some of the IBM technologies or Tomcat. So we've built up some of these monoliths or those types of things, just like any other company who's been established for a long time. I'm sorry, what? Yes, yeah, were there Pivotal contractors working with us? Yeah, absolutely. That's a part of the engagement. So the approach really asks for, we have 4 team members fully dedicated to it, and Pivotal has 4 team members fully dedicated to it. And right now they're not this week. We're taking a week off because of the conference, but they work at 4 terminals in one room, right? So it's full paired programming, and that is just, you have to have the application owner and application SME partner with someone from Pivotal to make the connection work and really move as quickly as we are so far. Yeah, we're looking to do 14 applications in 10 weeks. right? So we did 3 in 2 weeks, and that included a couple of days of planning and inception. So yeah, we're aggressive, but we're learning a lot pretty quickly. All right, so I think that's my time. I'll be up here, or catch me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions. So thank you.